Also, we see that the worsening of the situation in the global economy is not something that started overnight. We've seen that for years. And what we see right now in the Russian economy and in the economy overall is not the result of the special military operation that pursued by Russia in the Donbass. In fact, we see that the surge in inflation in commodities markets and in other markets has started long before the events of February 24. And we have seen many years of irresponsible macroeconomic policy by the G7 countries that made that happen. They printed new money, they gave loans that could never be returned, and it all worsened with the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. And then in 2020, when both demand and supply were on the lowest, were some of the lowest. And what does our special military operation in the Donbass have to do with that? They have no other ways out. So the governments of the Western nations just started to print money, more money, and they're covering the deficits in their economy by printing money. Over the past 2 years, the overall amount of money in the US rose by 38%. We've seen the same happen for the same amount of money printed in decades, and now it just happened in a couple of years, in 1 year. And only a few countries in the world have statistics as that. Europe printed a lot of money. They have now 20% money, which is about 2.5 trillion euros. And recently I've been hearing a lot, more and more, about... well, I don't like to talk about that, but we've all been hearing these words. It's Putin's inflation, and every time I hear that, I think to myself, who's going to believe that? Who's going to agree with that? Anyone who has a mind, who thinks, will not believe that Russia and our operation in the Donbass has anything to do with that. The current situation in the markets, the problem with food, with energy, with all those markets, is all the results of the systemic errors and mistakes by the bureaucrats in Washington and in Europe. They are the reason. Yes, let me say a few words about our operation. Of course, that had to do something with that, but the root of all those problems is the policies pursued by Western politicians, and they're trying to scapegoat us for their own mistakes. But anyone who has even a primary school education understands that just printing money will not solve your problems. Once you print them, what are you going to do with them? How are you going to deal with the repercussions? Then they started buying products made outside of the Western world, outside of the US. They started importing things from the rest of the world, but they didn't think about their own economies and about their own future, about their own people. And so the rest of the world was left with scraps. In 2018, the US imported about $200 billion worth of products every month, and now it's about $350 billion worth of goods a month, and it's a growth that is not secured by anything. It's just money that they're printing. They are not backed by anything. They give out money to their people and they import goods from third world countries. That's it. For many years, the US has provided food products for the rest of the world and for other markets, and it was a good thing to do. They had good farming traditions, they had good technologies, and they were a good example even for us. But now it has changed radically. And Now the US is no longer an exporter of food. It now imports food. It prints money, and then it tries to gravitate, this commodity flows towards itself. And the same is happening in the EU. You know that when there's a surge in demand and combined with all the other issues, resulted in a surge of inflation. And now we have commodity goods, we have food, we have energy, and the prices of all those goods are rising. The balance between the export and the imports is skewed. Imports is now $17 billion more than the exports, and according to the UN, in this year, the index food by 17th of June was 50% more, and it was much more than May last year. And many are asking the question, why would you pay dollars or euros for those goods when these currencies are actually failing? As a result, we see the rise of an economy of real values and real assets, not just the currencies such as euros and dollars. The money that the West is printing is being devalued by 8% a year. And also, another problem is that they can be confiscated and stolen basically from you if the US or the Western world believes that you are wrong somehow in your foreign policy. So this is an important thing to consider if you're a government and you have a lot of dollars in your reserves. And this is an objective truth, and in the upcoming month, in the upcoming years, this process of converting your reserves to other currencies will begin. This is objectively going to happen. Other countries will do that. They will continue to buy goods, to buy energy, to buy food using other currencies, and this will result in even greater dollar inflation. As for Europe, there was another negative problem when it comes to prices, and it has to do with the failures in Europe's energy policies. They blindly believed in their renewable energy sources and that they could rely on them alone. And this has led to a massive rise in energy prices that started in the third quarter of last year. And this has started long before our special operation in the Donbass, and they are blaming us. They made their prices soar, and then they point the finger at us. This resulted in the rise of prices for many services and goods, and the rise of prices for fertilizers and potash fertilizers. And in 1 year, from February last year to February this year, prices rose by 70%. And there are no reasons for these price changes to happen. Entire enterprises are being blocked in their operations. Russian fertilizers are not allowed to be exported to Europe. And this is further moving Europe's economy down the drain. They are seeing less and less yields in their agriculture, which will mean there'll be less food, and food prices will rise even further, and this will result in famine in some of the world's least wealthy countries. Some of the world's poorest countries will suffer from that. And this has started not just yesterday, this has been going on for many months, and it is not Russia's fault, as many populists are saying, trying to blame Russia for everything bad that's happening in the global economy. Well, I mean, we probably would be flattered to hear that we are so great and so powerful that we can drive inflation to the sky in the US. Maybe we would be flattered to hear that, but that's simply not true. This has been happening. We've seen this developing for years. We see countries trying to solve their problems at the expense of others. They believe that just emitting money, printing money, and buying more goods from abroad is something that can help them, but they actually started humanitarian disasters in many parts of the world by pursuing these policies. This is the same colonial politics, just performed differently, through different means. It's the same colonialism we've seen for decades. Now, for Russia, our priority is to provide food and other products for the rest of the world, especially those countries that are poorest and require these products. Russia has secured its own food security, and we are going to increase the exports of grain, of agricultural goods, of fertilizers to the rest of the world. We're going to increase the exports of fertilizers by up to 50%. Especially, we're going to target those countries that risk facing famines, and I'm talking about African countries and the Middle East. In addition to that, there are other difficulties that have to do with what other actors do in the global politics. Of course, Russian grain, Russian fertilizers are being sanctioned, are being blocked by many of the Western countries. But then Americans realized that they made a mistake and they removed some of the sanctions. But the Europeans, I guess, are not so smart. They haven't done that before, and they haven't done that. And people understand that they have made a mistake, but they can no longer go back. They cannot lose face. And Russia, let me say that again, Russia is ready to contribute to balancing the situation in the global food markets. We welcome open dialogue about that. We welcome all the discussion that can take place within the UN with people who understand what's going to happen. We can talk about normalizing logistics, transportation, to increase the amount of Russian exports in food and fertilizers to the rest of the world. There's a lot of speculations going on about Ukrainian deliveries to the rest of the world. We're not blocking that. We haven't blocked their seaports in the Black Sea, and we are actually ready to provide security for their ships, for the ships that are going to transport their grain and other products. The U.S. Agricultural Agency believes there's 6 million tons of wheat. We believe this is 5 million tons of wheat, and also 7 million tons of maize. And we also have other seaports, not just the Black Sea seaports, but also we have Belarus. We can move these products through Poland, through Romania, through other countries.